So, what are we here for today?
Well, we have to start our work in PLCs, right? Like I know our school's really focusing hard and strong on getting these PLCs up and running, and a lot of that starts with us, right? Like we're both working in the math department. I know, what course are you teaching right now?
I'm teaching that new year, the new year-long math.
Year-long math. Okay,
Yeah, so I got a couple other sections, but that's what I have the most of this year.
Okay, and I'm doing a 12 academic and a 12 advanced right now. So what we really want to do is let's just dive right in, right? Because we have all semester to kind of work with each other and work with our kids, right? Although we're teaching different courses, I really do think that we can focus on an area, an area of instruction that we really focus on and kind of help these kids out, right? So our school goal in math is critical thinking, was it not? It was to improve student achievement in the areas of critical thinking.
Because it's a CSI year too. Remember last year we spent all that time meeting together, getting our school data, where we were, developing our strategies and stuff.
Okay, so obviously one of our areas of focus is to help our kids improve in that area, critical thinking. So our first step in this PLC right now is very simple, I think, Craig. I think we just need to identify an area of instructional focus, right? An instructional area of focus. How are we going to help our kids improve in critical thinking skills, if you will, as far as an instructional strategy, something that we're going to try that's maybe a little bit different. So what do anything come to mind, like as far as that?
I know you brought a grade book.
Yeah,
so did I.
And we were looking at it, I was looking at it before.
So I'm wondering, are there any sort of things that came up in the first couple weeks? Like I noticed my students were having problems with problem solving, questions are a little more complex.
Yeah, that's, you know what? And
engagement's always an issue, but just, the small, easy step ones they get, but as soon as I try to, apply these skills to a different question, but same skills,
yeah, it's
big trouble.
I'm noticing the same thing. Procedurally, my kids are really good. They can repeat a drill or a procedure that I've taught them. But all of a sudden I dress the question up a little bit, put it in a different type of a packaging, and they're having trouble unwrapping that, right? So it's those higher cognitive demand type questions they're having problems with. So I think that's going to be consistent with any real course within the math department as far as I'm concerned. I think our kids are obviously going to be struggling with those level 3 type problems, right?
So I know there's some of the sort of questions we're kind of supposed to look at, like, what are the areas of assessment that our students are struggling with? So we've kind of identified both of us. Doesn't matter if it's 10, and obviously if I'm not doing things in 10, they're not translating into 12, right? So you're saying the same things are being addressed at.
Right.
So let's talk about causes for a minute. What do we really think the issue is?
So why? Like, why are they struggling?
Like why, or what can we do different so that, because obviously whatever we're doing, my plan's just not working. They're not transferring those skills from the simple ones to the more complex ones.
So how, when you're talking about those level 3 type problems, or those higher, asking the kids to analyze and reflect, think critically, how are you doing that right now in your classroom? Like, what does it look like for your kids?
And I'm thinking, just right now, maybe I've been doing the same thing that I always did.
Right.
I wonder, is it a good idea for us to, maybe you could stop by my class for a couple minutes, watch me in action, or I could stop by your class, or we could watch a couple other math classes, or could we even look at, what some maybe, we could do a little bit of research, maybe we'll go online and say, are these some of the issues that other schools are struggling with, and here's some things they're doing differently.
Right. Yeah, I think.
Because I know doing the same thing over and over, that's going to be the same result.
Yeah, and you know what? I haven't had really anyone come into my class and kind of give me some feedback critically about how I'm going about doing this. Because you're right, in that grade 12 curriculum, even in the grade 10, you teach the curriculum, and there are those higher cognitive type questions within. But I don't really know if I'm doing anything specifically to kind of help my kids walk through that or develop skills in that area. So that's a really good point. The thing is, though, just like you said, I'm not exactly sure if I really know how to do that. Right? So
what could our sort of timeline action plan be? Because obviously we need to sort of leave, gather some more evidence of things, come back, and then sort of make our plan.
Well, see, here's the thing. What we have, as well as I do, we have an awesome math department head. Right? The first thing I feel like doing right now is the printer. Geez, slap. The first thing I feel like doing right now is sitting down with him. Mr. McClellan, he's awesome. He's taught all these courses, and I think he really has a handle on what teaching students through problem solving or what teaching critical thinking skills might look like in different classes. So maybe.
Right, because he's an IB teacher, so I know they've had some additional training in, how that sort of looks as well.
So why don't we do this? Well, I'll talk to him for sure, and I'm gonna pull as much resources from him as possible. Maybe I'll get him to come meet with us when he has some opportunity to kind of support us too. In the meantime, why don't we go our separate ways here? I know right away I'm kind of inspired about this. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna get online and say, hey, what does teaching critical thinking skills look like in a math classroom?
Right.
There's got to be stuff online. There's got to be some professional literature, some online resources that we can access. And why don't we both do that? We'll bring it all our next week. We meet again, right? Same time? Is it same time or different?
And let's bring our CSI plan next week, because I think there's a couple specific strategies in there that might be addressing that as well.
Okay, so we'll bring that. We'll bring everything we find as far as strategies that might prove useful or beneficial to students in terms of critical thinking in the math classroom, and we'll go from there. And maybe we focus on one or two of those, and we get our heads around that, and then we start maybe planning an implementation plan for that or something like that.
I like that. So meet same time again next week.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks,
We got
Greg.
it all planned.
That's perfect. All right.
Hey, Israel, how was your week?
Good. Real good. Busy.
Second semester.
Yeah,
Here we go.
It's killing me.
Right.
So what do you want to do?
Yeah,
let's
well, here, I remember, let's just have a look. I know we decided to do a couple things last week. We said we were going to go back and maybe look at some research.
Right,
What's,
right.
Related to, what we talked about a little bit last week, and we're going to talk to some people.
Right.
So how do we make out with that?
Well, I had that conversation with Mike McClellan.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so I definitely did that, and I definitely was online. I hope you were too, because man, I found some pretty interesting stuff about critical thinking and helping students get better with regards to those higher level type problems and stuff like that. So,
Me too.
Okay.
Right? I found a couple of.
You didn't want to leave me hanging.
No, I wouldn't do that to you.
Okay.
I blew some dust off a couple books I had.
Okay.
That I think that my administrator passed out on. One was how to give effective feedback.
Okay.
Right. So I think that was Susan Summer or whatever. I looked through that. Lots of good stuff around descriptive feedback. So basically, my old thing of good job, keep it up. It doesn't do anything. She's like, you got to tell them what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, how it can improve, and then use that to kind of guide your practice too. So lots of stuff about descriptive feedback.
So in the area of helping kids get better with those higher level thinking type problems.
Right.
Okay. So do you have that research? Like you brought that? You had
that
on state and everything else?
I brought
Okay.
that. So that's
Okay.
one of the things I know we want to talk about.
So I spoke to McClellan about. I said, hey Mike, we're in a PLC here, Greg and I, and one of the things that we really want to focus on is helping. Obviously, our school goal, helping our kids improve in critical thinking.
Right.
What are some strategies?
Was he excited when you said relate to the school goal?
Well, he did.
All right.
Because he's doing a lot of hard work on that. So, but the first thing he did was he kind of laughed. He goes, "Don't you remember the PD they went to?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" We both went to this teaching through problems, so it's breakthrough mathematics PD.
Right.
And the whole focus is on helping kids become better problem solvers, helping kids develop critical thinking skills. And one of the strategies he talked to us about was teaching through problem solving, really helping the kids work their way through problems, develop those critical thinking skills, and then, believe it or not, he said, giving descriptive feedback along the way to those kids. So I thought that was really interesting.
Kind of linked together.
Yeah, it was totally awesome. The other thing that I kind of looked at online about was, anytime I looked at supporting students in mathematics, improving achievement in mathematics, one of the biggest things was differentiated assessment and instruction, right? So knowing that not all our kids are going to be struggling with the same content, with the same type of questions and so on and so forth. So kind of using assessment and instruction to meet kids where they are, their own ability levels.
Because we know, how many times does we keep hearing if we just do things the same, the results can be the same.
And
So,
doing the same thing for all our kids,
Right.
right?
And not sort of meeting those kids, kind of where they are. And I see that, I could use a little bit of change in my practice. Like I could start to, I'm getting the idea about this is kind of what are we doing differently?
Okay.
Like,
Right.
is that kind of, or what could we be doing differently?
Well, it's funny because when I read the research on that, I was sitting there going, geez, sometimes I assign a problem in the textbook, and right before I even assign it, I know a third of my kids who are just going to breeze through and be waiting.
Right.
And I already know a third of my kids that will never get it.
Because remember we said last week we were going to go look at some other classes?
Yeah.
I stopped into Kelly Cooper's class for a minute, and she was doing all these great things that I never even thought of, like easy.
Okay.
Like she had Cooper Ease, so she used a different color marker up on the board when it was like new vocabulary.
Okay.
And then she put it into student-friendly language. That was the Cooper Ease.
Okay.
So just a couple little things that
Things
she
that we could buy
differentiated.
into.
And I was like, how easy is that?
Right.
Like
Differential instruction right there, kind of
Right, 'cause-
helping the kids that from where they are. Some kids will need it, some kids won't.
That's not even an add-on for
Okay.
like what I was doing. So
Love it.
I do like that. All right, I'm interested to hear more
So,
about
one of the other things I found online there was just some information about implementing effective questioning. So, often, and this is totally speaking to my practice, it was so funny, because how many times when you're working and a kid puts up their hand and says, can you help me with number 4, we go over and we walk them through it, right?
Right.
Like I do that all the time. I just walk them through, yeah, we gotta do this. And you
Or
gotta
say it louder.
But how many times do you take their pencil out of their hands? I do it all the time. I just grab their pencil and I start working, right? So this was speaking to a strategy where completely hands off, and in order to help them when they have that question, to provide them with a question. So whether the question is re-engaging them into the problem,
Right.
Redirecting them because they're way off base, or clarifying a question that asking them to clarify what it is that they really need help with.
So if I just help them and do the question for them, that's not helping them at all.
It says,
I'm helping them, but I'm really not.
Yeah, you're helping them maybe accomplish a question, but have we helped them develop the goal being become better
Right.
problem solvers and critical thinkers.
So when they get to the next problem, they have to apply those skills, or they're right back where they were.
They're right back, and the hand goes up again,
Mr.
right?
MacKinnon, come help me.
I see that all the time. I'm sure you do in grade
Right.
10 too, right? So I thought that was a really awesome, some awesome research that I was looking at here that I definitely would like to buy into. Problem I came up with, Greg, is that there's too much.
No, we should do all those. They're
No.
awesome. Like I want to go back today and I want to do like that problem solving, the scripted feedback. I want to do things differently. Can't we fit it all in?
The problem I have with that, Greg, is I don't have the time to do that. Like, I think it's way too big for us. Like, we're looking
and
at
they did
change-
talk about that, remember? And they said, don't do a bunch of stuff that's extra in part of your CSI plan. Pick a strategy or two and go with it. All right, you're right.
You know, like, because if we're going to do something, I'd rather do one thing right now really well.
Right.
Let's invest ourselves in one strategy. Like, we're talking about 3 or 4 here right now, instructional strategies.
Pick one. And
Let's identify one instructional area of focus here that we're going to change our practice with a little bit.
and then we would just try that out for like next week, or
Well, you know what? You know, I'm looking at some of my notes here and it says, okay,
Right.
plan the implementation of what we're going to do.
Right.
This is a stretch for us. Like, if we're going to do teaching through problem solving, for example, what that looks like is actually, you know, when we're up front and we're introducing a new concept? Well, teaching through problem solving, from what I read, I went back to my breakthrough binders, it's actually introducing a concept through a problem, through a higher level type problem, that we just place them in flexible groups and let them go, and let them attempt it. So,
right, because I remember one of those strategies in the plan was if we let them work cooperatively together, that encourages the critical thinking.
and
So that's one of the things
communication
we're
and
doing right there.
reasoning, absolutely.
But that's
So-
going to be hard for me because I'm used to you doing the 20 minutes up front,
Yeah.
where it's me.
It's a
and
stretch.
then I give them that.
That's right, and then we work on problems, right?
Right.
We introduce the concept, teach them how to do it, and we just go, hey, repeat what I'm learning.
So I'm doing, you know, linear equations or relations, domain range, rates. How would that look kind of for me in
Okay.
grade 10? Because I'm usually like up on the board, you know, y equals mx
Defining
plus
it,
b,
giving
this
them the
is
equation.
c.
I totally know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, what you could do, again, it's out of my comfort zone a little bit. It might be out of yours, but instead of jumping right into the introducing, and this is what I was reading last night, introducing that content as you have to create an equation. Here's what it looks like. Here's what the parts are, etc., etc. Why don't you try looking through the book, finding a really good question in that unit, and putting it on the table in groups and seeing what they come up with.
And don't even say, do this, do that.
Yeah.
This is it.
Here,
you go.
guys and girls, I've
Here's
really
the
interesting
problem.
We're going to do some
Handle
things, and let's see what happens. Because odds are,
See
from
that?
what the research says, they're going to create strategies to try to solve it. And they're going to be...
May I have your attention,
Now,
please?
announcement.
This is a reminder of the O2 staff
Announcements.
meeting today
Yeah,
at lunch in
announcements
room
throughout the day.
115. That's a reminder of the
Instructional
O2
learning.
staff meeting in room 115 at lunch. Thank you.
How can we work on policies with announcements all day? That's another meeting.
That's
All right,
another meeting.
we're filling
That's
time.
another-
Okay, stop.
So anyway, what you could do is find a really good question, like, that comes in the unit, put it down, like I know for linear relations and so on and so forth, they do a lot of focus on cab companies, for example, like they have a base rate and they charge per kilometer or something like that. Maybe strategize and flexibly select your groups, right?
Right.
And maybe go with that. You know, try that. Introduce your concept that way. Pull them up, have them explain their strategies, and then build from there. Maybe build your unit from there.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Why don't we do this? Let's agree to do this. Let's agree to try it at least once this week.
Right.
Introducing, because I'm starting quadratics,
And
some
you're going to do
functions,
with quadratics,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it with linear relations.
and I already got my head around a problem that I'm going to put on there and see what happens, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it.
And I kind of do too, like it could be, you know, cliff jumping, could be cab company, could be something to do with the Olympics, because that's topical.
Let's make it of interest. I think that's great. So some question or problem that they have to solve it in a group where they come up with some strategies like a data table. Maybe they're looking for to create their own equation and have them explain to the group. Then build your unit on that.
So next week we're just coming back with how it went.
Let's just try it.
Not worry about collecting data, how to do anything like that. We're just
no.
gonna try it out and see.
This is the big
anecdotal, and
yeah,
we're gonna
totally. Maybe reflect on it at the end of the lesson. Write some key things that might have happened,
Right.
and we'll come back and share them with you. I'm really interested because right now I don't do this enough. But I definitely want to try it more. So let's just try it once. Let's just do it once.
All right, that's the lunch bell. So we're on duty.
I spoke it.
All right,
Good.
that's awesome.
All right.
Sweet.
Take it easy. This is our third meeting.
Right.
Can you do me a favor? Can we write a few things down on the board just to kind of keep us focused in this meeting? Like, I just want our steps so that we can make the most out of our time here
Okay.
today together. So the first thing we're going to do, Greg, is really just talk about how the implementation went of our strategy.
Right. So what we did last week.
Yeah, because we both went away after our last meeting saying we're going to try some stuff. First things first, let's get some things down on how that went. All right? I also want to kind of discuss with you, because I thought this was really wicked, about how my kids responded. I'm sure you'd like to share that a little bit too.
So we talked about our strategy, now we're going to talk about how it went.
How it went, like how the students respond. I'd love to know from you, there's someone at our PLC door.
We're busy. Come back later. PLC.
Okay, love it. I'd love to know too from you, like if you felt there was a positive impact on how they learned.
Oh, okay. So is that kind of how did it go?
Sure.
Or is that,
Like,
what was the impact?
yeah, impact, exactly. Let's talk about that. I'd love also to know, because I know this is like, I've kind of had a little bit of experience in this. I'd love to know how you felt that change on your practice went. Like, I'm dying to know if this is something that you feel that you could, do in the long run. Like you see yourself doing this on an ongoing basis, right?
So we're looking at two different things. We're looking at how did it go, what impacts have it on the students, but maybe how to go for us too.
Absolutely, for your
Is it
professional
something we
practice.
could carry on?
Absolutely. If you feel, do you need more learning in that area? Like, do we need to pick up some more tips, some more strategies on how to implement that effectively?
And now are we going to decide, like, how are we going to start measuring
That's right.
if it's worth continuing on with? Like, are we going to start talking about
Well,
some assessing of that, or are we just going to go anecdotal?
well, there's some anecdotal notes.
Or what
that we
data
can
we're
take.
going to collect, maybe?
Yeah, that's what we need to go. Like, first of all, if we
Right.
feel like we're good enough and we're confident in the strategy and implementing it, now let's sit down and talk about how are we going to evaluate whether or not it's having an impact on the kids. Because if we implement a strategy like this teaching through problem solving, but the kids aren't getting better at their critical thinking skills,
Right.
what's the point? We got to change things up.
Right.
So maybe we need to sit down today and talk about how we're going to assess whether or not it's having an impact on student learning.
So this is a lot to do for today, so maybe let's get at it.
Let's get at it.
Alright, so maybe we'll start with you. How'd it go this week in your class? First of all, what'd you try?
All right. Well, I stuck to the plan. Like I wasn't biting off any. It was a crazy week. I wasn't gonna bite off anything any more than I really needed to or wanted to. So totally, but kind of by definition, teaching through problem solving. Went back again, looked at the binder and the strategies how to do it. Introduced the unit, functional relationships, quadratics, or what have you. I laid down a problem, like a higher kind of cognitive type problem, higher level overthinking type problem. Broke them up into groups, heterogeneous groups actually. Because I wanted
Groups, that was one of the work collaboratively as a strategy. That was one of the ones I remember reading about.
Totally.
I tried that too.
And I said, if this is going to work, they got to be sitting together. And I didn't want to put them in homogeneous groups because I thought, maybe for the first attempt at this, we have some stronger kids in each of the groups to kind of help guide some of the conversation, right?
My grade 10 class is all over the place. So,
Right.
I know what you mean. Like
Yeah.
eventually maybe I might have to put them together, but I was just sort of...
Kind of mixing them up
Yeah.
at this point. So laid it down. It was just a problem, simple cliff diving problem. Asking them to come up with answer some questions on the scenario. So it was really good. It was hard for me. I put it on the tables and walked away. And all I did was kind of let them go. Obviously the first thing I got was, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do?
Same. What do I do?
And so all I did was I tried my best with some effective questions to kind of say, okay, so what about the problem you're having trouble with? Try to get them to talk through it without doing for them. It was, that's how it went down for me. And all class I spent until the last 15 minutes, I just spent, because it took groups a while to figure out how they wanted to approach it. And some of the strategies, it was amazing.
It's gotta be hard to sit there. Like, that's what I found the hardest for me. I went, okay.
Yeah.
But I think it was harder than me than it was on the students.
I
just sat there,
listen.
like, Mr. McKinnon, can you help me? Can you help me?
Right.
Well, no, you just a little, thought about this,
And that's
but
the
no,
thing,
like, just do this.
And before I did it, I went back and I thought, okay, what am I going to do when they do have the questions, like for me, like how do I do it, like where should I go from here? So I kind of had a few key questions in my head, like just so I could rhyme them off, or I could like re-engage them in the problem, redirect them because I think they're off, like going the wrong direction, and even kind of like asking them to clarify what they're asking to me. So I had those on hand. I roamed the whole class, like.
Just wrong.
I roamed from group to group
good.
and listened, and then I used redirection just to keep them on task.
Here's the, like I know one of the things we said we talked about was what was the impact on the student learning.
Right.
So here's what I saw. They were more willing to take risks to do things because later that week, when I sort of threw something up on the board,
Yeah.
I was just about to launch into it, and a couple of them said, "Hey, can we just like work on it for a couple
Give us
minutes
a
ourselves?"
second.
Like
Awesome.
I was like, "Sure."
Right.
So even they knew like it wasn't judgmental, like and that just sort of unfolded, and then I had a couple people go up, try out solutions. Then it was really like it was a flipped classroom almost. Like they
Right.
did everything, and
They came up with
right.
solution strategies, and that's what happened at the end of the class. I brought each, kind of representatives from each group. They came up to the front and just kind of explained how they went about their strategies and how they solved it. Now, all I did was validate those strategies, and if they were way off, there was one group that was way off. I kind of validated their work, and we kind of redirected them in a way. But right now, I haven't even gone into quadratics and the quadratic relation or anything like that. Tomorrow, or
Just working on that.
the next day I started bringing back like what it is we were looking at, the big general idea of quadratics function, that type of a function or what have you. So relate that type of relationship.
Now, they're always after us, like the principal's always collect data, because we've got to show up for the plan or whatever. I mean, I agree with that, but I wouldn't mind just knowing how it's going for us, because is it making any difference to how the students are doing? Like, does us just feel better about it, they feel better, or are they actually going to start to perform better on those tasks?
Right.
Is there something that we could do together to see how it's going and sort of compare like how they're doing in grade 10, how they're doing in grade 12?
Right.
Like, I don't even know what the word I'm using for here. Like, I know we want to do some sort of assessment, but
Yeah.
I know we don't teach the same classes, but can we
Can we?
something that's common between us, like tack something on the end of a question, give one question that's the same format on problem solving or critical thinking or...
Well, here's the thing. Our curriculums differ,
Yeah.
for sure. So I'm going to find it hard for us to give the same question,
Right.
especially considering the content that you're doing, the content I'm doing.
Yeah, that's not going to make it, you're doing something totally different.
Yeah, but so let's make it, like I understand what you're saying, like we've implemented a strategy here and we just started, but how do we know it's having an impact on student learning? Like how do we know they're getting better at critical thinking and solving problems and this and that? So we need to find out a way that whether or not this instruction strategy is even working, right? Because if it's not, I gotta be honest with you, Greg, I'm not doing teaching through problem solving if it's not helping the kids. I'm gonna stop.
Right.
Right?
If we're not, thinking about is it successful or should we replicate it, or maybe we want to share it with other people.
Right.
But if we're like, no, that's a waste of time.
Because it's not working, right?
Stop it. Like,
Okay.
how many times have we done the same thing for 5 years and it was a bad plan? Like, I'm done with that.
Okay, so my thought is this. If we're gonna sit here today and kind of determine maybe some types of small, like formative type assessments that we could use to kind of assess whether or not this is having an impact on them, they have to be related to what we're doing in the class. They obviously have to be like have a higher order type, a problem type, a rich problem of such, related to our curriculum. So.
And does that have to be something that we give some feedback on too?
And we have to be able to kind of either take it in or maybe we don't take it in, maybe we just kind of, maybe we go around to their desks and kind of evaluate them as they go and maybe evaluate their approach. And then again, we have to sit down and decide what are we going to be looking for that defines improvement in critical thinking.
Right, so
what are some criteria?
Right, so both of us together, I guess, whether we do that right now or whether we meet later in the week before we sort of collect some stuff and see how it's going.
Right.
We really need to decide on what our criteria are
What's the criteria for
Yeah,
critical thinking? Like,
critical
what
thinking,
does
like,
good critical thinking
you know,
skills look like?
how we're going to have sort of a common marking scheme or rubric, whatever you want to call it, so you and I are on the same page about
How we're assessing it.
if I look at a sample from you, you look at a sample from me, we sort of mark those together so we know we're on the same page
Okay.
about that. So, and then we can start making some decisions. But I think until we have a good instrument that we can even use, you know.
Right.
So do we feel like we could go away for a couple days, come up with something, come back together, put that question together, have that sort of
Yeah.
common must-haves or whatever, and then we'll sort of blend those two in together and we'll tack it on to the end of something? It doesn't have to be a big test or
No,
whatever,
no.
right? It could be like one
any-
little exit card, one little problem, one whatever.
related to our curriculum. So,
Right.
so maybe we come together. Let's go away from this.
Right.
Thinking about what would it look like? What would a good question look like? Maybe, okay, let's decide right now. I'm gonna be honest. Having a big test and a big shutdown thing, I'm not doing.
No, that's
It's
just the
too
paper
much
chase,
work.
right?
Yeah.
Activity
I'm not
trap,
doing-
is that what
it's
you
an
call it?
I do.
Activity trap.
It's an activity trap. What I want to do is maybe provide them with one type of a question, one question. I'd like to think it's an open-ended question, so there's a variety of strategies to solve it. So I'm not tunneling them into.
Because that's not what we're measuring. We're
Right.
measuring their
I'm measuring overall, do they have the ability to think critically about a problem and attempt it and provide a strategy and some rationale for why they use strategies, things like that. So maybe you go back with the unit that you're doing and come up with a question. Don't implement it yet.
No.
Let's come back and
One
talk about it.
question.
So I'd love to run mine by you. And then we'll sit down with those questions and kind of determine, would this question give us information that we want about assessing if they're getting better at critical thinking? Now,
and then we could look at, you know, we'll give that, then we can come back together and we can ask some questions about,
yeah,
you know, are we gonna make some changes?
right.
Throw it away, follow up.
Totally, and then maybe we discuss how often we'll do it.
Right.
Because we just started. Are we expecting that the kids are gonna get better right now?
Right.
You
Are we
know.
gonna do that once a week, once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks,
Yeah,
whatever?
let's come back and figure out the logistics, but right now, let's go away, you create one, I'll create one. So we're okay with one question? I'm okay
One
with one
question.
question. I think
One
that'll
question.
give us one open-ended type of a problem where there's a variety of strategies.
If they can apply things they've learned to one thing that they haven't seen before, hopefully they could do that. And
Okay.
it'll be a different question every time we do it, so we'll see
Different
that too.
question, now.
Right, they
my-
did good on this one, but not on this one, you know.
Now, Greg, my only thing is I've heard this in the past where people just tack on, like this is, you know, the old PFI, they've tacked on a question that had no relation
Right,
to
no.
the curriculum they're teaching that day. I'm not doing
They
that.
won't even know that that's in there, it's just one of the questions in that
Just,
assessment.
it's totally related to what they're doing today. I love it. Okay, so let's go away.
Did I do that this week?
And we'll come back, and then we'll evaluate it and stuff like that.
Alright, it's good work.
Awesome.
See you next week. So yeah, alright.
Great. Listen, I'm real tired today. I mean, this is end of the day, but I really wanted to, I know it's important that we meet, and this is it. We've been doing this now, like I've implemented, I know it's last 4 weeks or so, right?
For the common assessments.
Yeah, and I've implemented 3 to this point, and I have my 4th one now. And I know we talked about bringing the results here, just having like
Right.
our classroom data, like
Got mine here
you
as
got
well.
yours there, just to kind of talk it over and see how our kids are doing. So we've implemented these kind of open-ended, higher-level problems in the curriculum. We've done it. We really got to get down now to looking at this data, because now let's talk about our kids. Because I know, Greg, in my class right now, I have a whole lot of kids that are responding extremely well to this, and it's very obvious that they now are building, number one, the confidence to take risks. They're also feeling that they have different strategies to use when I'm giving them a problem that they really need to dive into and think critically about. But I also have a handful of kids still that haven't really responded yet, are still struggling.
Alright, I'm kind of the same. Remember
Okay.
we talked about that first week we had some anecdotal data, just how is it going, we
Right.
felt good about it, we felt the kids were good about it, but now, after doing it for a couple weeks like you were saying,
Yeah.
you know, I'm seeing that, okay, we got a group of kids that are doing better.
Okay.
You know, have the assessment, give them some feedback, a little bit of guidance, you know, a little bit better. But those kids who weren't doing well still aren't doing well.
Still aren't doing well?
Right.
From the get-go?
From the get-go. So I got the group that
Okay.
better. I think that whatever we're doing differently for them around the problem solving, you know, the changes I felt I made in my class were making a difference, but I still have that group of kids that I don't think it's making a difference for.
Okay. So the idea here is like, how are you responding? Okay, because here's the thing. Bottom line is this. It's working, and yet it's not working for some, so what are we going to do about it?
So what changes do we make in our instructional practice as a result of this?
Okay.
Like, I know we've been tweaking a little bit, or I've been tweaking a little bit, I know you have too.
I
So
gotta
did you do
tell you,
anything differently with groups?
this is the thing, okay? So when I first started out doing this teaching through problem solving, putting the problem, I was completely hands off, okay? So everyone was attacking the problem in groups.
Just like go to.
It was just go to it. I was being very,
Right.
I like to think I was being effective with my effective questioning to kind of support them through, okay? The more and more I've done this, like the last 4 weeks, I've recognized that there's a specific pocket of kids that are still struggling with that, okay? So what I've done, like in terms of how I've changed my practice, I've set the culture already for them to work in groups by doing this.
And that's one of the, working collaboratively is one of the strategies.
Yeah,
So
so it was
that
really
was a change
this
for
way.
me.
Right. So what I've done was now I'm strategically selecting my groups so that I've grouped the kids that are struggling together. And let me tell you why. And this is how, like, why I think the kids are going to react really well when I keep doing this, is that those kids that I know that are being successful with this type of learning, this constructive approach learning, they're good. They're taking risks on their own, and I can check in throughout. Now I have the kids all together that really need me, like really need me in a more in-depth way. So they're, not only are they sitting together, they're struggling with the same type of thing. So now I've kind of adapted my practice in a way where I'm giving them a little bit more of a differentiated kind of look of instruction there. Like I'm with them a little bit more, I'm engaging them in a different way. I'm kind of sliding over, drawing a few pictures for them to kind of help them see the connection between the problem and where they need to go next. Whereas I'm not removing the challenge from the rest of the kids. They're still being challenged at their level, but I'm able to come back. So I'm really using this strategy, this instructional strategy of teaching through problem solving in a way to really help those kids. But they're getting there. But could you see maybe you doing something like that?
I could, because like here's the things I've thought I did differently. You know, I was those people that were struggling, I was giving them more time, frequent check-ins, moving them closer, proximity, that sort of stuff. But I never thought of switching the groupings around.
Right.
You know, like keeping those kids that were doing really well, so that gave me more time. You know, I was still, you know, one strong student, one medium.
Okay, so still
right?
heterogeneous.
I hadn't really mixed the groups up really, so that's something that I can take back. So did you see that in the data? Like once you did that and had some more time to work those other groups, they did a little bit better?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not the actual data that I was concerned about, but it's my feedback verbally that I'm getting from the kids.
From those students.
These students are saying, you know, Miss Gravity, this is awesome. Like, in not so many words, but all of a sudden kids that never ask questions, because I'm with them in a group, they don't feel intimidated because they're with kids that right now are struggling with the same thing. All of a sudden these questions are coming up, like, hey, what do I do here? What can I do here? Do you think this is right? So they're trying some things, and I can give them some feedback in that way. So you talked about it, like bringing kids to the front of the class and proximity and stuff. Like, I mean, I think those are good like adaptations to make for those kids, but at the same time,
not changes in my practice.
yeah, I don't think they could really relate to actual instructional changes. But here, where I mix up the groupings, and let me tell you, like my feedback on it is for you, like just if I was going to share with you. It's making my job easier every day because I'm not running around to 20 different desks.
Right. Some of them are sort of
they're
rolling with it, and
it's really, and I find it really good that way.
So if we're talking about kind of our next steps, like here's the two things. I like these strategies. I think we should just keep going with them.
Oh, I do too.
Because you know, I mean, we're collecting some data. Things are they exactly where we want them to be? Not yet.
Right. And here's some changes that you can make.
Here's some changes we're gonna make.
Right. So I'm going to keep going.
I'm still worried about those kids who aren't getting it.
Right.
So what are the next steps for those kids?
Okay.
Are we going to keep pounding away at some different sort of things you gave me, or are there other things we can do to help them? Because I know part of the thing, you know, when we look at the assessments, we want to look at what all they're doing as a whole.
Right.
But now I think, you know, we got to focus in those individual kids. Like,
okay,
what are we doing to help them?
I think, as far as I'm going to go, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing right now.
Right.
But with those kids that are really struggling, like I highly recommend that you try that grouping piece.
Right.
And put those kids now, go homogeneous groupings and see if you can support them in that way. It's cutting you from running around a little bit more, you know, it's more focused support. Right. So differentiate your instruction in that way using those flexible groups. But what about bringing these kids up to a support team in the school?
Right.
Like, why don't we get all the individuals involved in supporting these kids together?
Because there's things that, you know, the school planning team or intervention team could help us with and say, you know, we know this kid, this has worked really well in another class, have you tried this, have you tried this?
Right.
You know, or maybe it's a literacy issue, like maybe we don't know, maybe that kid's really struggling to read, and we're trying to teach them complex problem strategies, but they're really struggling to read the question.
Right.
Not with the,
So it's the comprehension of
Yeah.
and so on and so.
something
Great.
like that.
So what do we do? You want to bring them to like school planning team?
Right, so let's do that. We'll take those kids who are really struggling, try to get some support for them, and we'll continue on with the common assessments. You know, 'cause it's worth continuing on with.
Right.
Like we're seeing some gains.
So let's
And
keep
we'll
the
keep
let's
sort of
keep the practice.
reevaluating.
Let's keep the change. Let's keep that instructional strategy in place.
Right.
Do we want to add anything at this point, or are we let's just let it roll?
I think we're good. Like let's want to collect a few more weeks of data and see how it goes.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So our action plan, sort of leaving, is just
Let's pick our our highest kind of red zone kids
Right.
in our class that might still not be responding well to things that we're doing differently. Bring them to SPT. Let's have a conversation with what the best strategy. Maybe there's things out there that we don't know about these kids.
like maybe the assessment format we're using doesn't work for them.
Right.
You know, maybe they need a different kind of assessment.
Okay.
I haven't even thought about doing that yet. Like we've been talking about
Yeah.
instructional practice.
Yeah, we haven't even changed
but
up how we're
we haven't
assessing
changed
it.
it how we're assessing them, so that might be it as well.
Okay.
You know what? Before we come back for our next meeting,
Yeah.
let's think of a different way
To-
we could
to
assess
assess
them.